How's it going, guys? My name's Luis, and this is my review of Absolver. Absolver is a brand new seamlessly connected online melee action game that's developed by Slowcap and published by Devolver Digital. It comes to PC and PS4 today for the price of $30, but will be coming to Xbox One sometime in the future. Absolver's story is minimal, but just enough to give you some context to the core of the melee combat. The game starts you off as a low-level prospect starting their journey of martial arts through the land of Adal and the ruins of the fallen empire. Prospects travel across these lands learning new fighting skills as they try to prove their worthiness of joining the Absolver Peacekeepers. To prove your worthiness, you must defeat 2 main bosses and 6 mini-bosses awaiting for you in the mini open world. During some lead-ups to the boss fights, you'll get some cutscenes that add a bit more story dialogue, but primarily you'll experience the story through the self-interpretation of the gameplay. Like I said before, the 6 to 7 hour main campaign is really just there to give a bit more story context to what the gameplay is about, but primarily this game is all about gameplay. In broad terms, the game almost plays out like a semi-open world fighting game that uses a hybrid of online and offline gameplay to create a single game. While traveling through the world, you will come across many other prospects, some with similar missions as you, and others who have been corrupted and have failed their mission. If you're offline, these will all be AI-controlled enemies, but if you're online, you'll see the occasional human player with the name above their head, in an almost online seamless integration. Having other human players in your game lets you interact with them. With the press of a button, you can perform an emo gesture sort of like Destiny, invite them to co-op the game, fight each other, or just completely ignore each other. You can technically play the game offline too, but it's really meant to be played online. Outside of just having other human players in your world, you can stop by the altars in the world and matchmake other players for an online duel. At launch, this will technically be the only multiplayer mode with a 1v1 mode, but in the future a 3v3 and a spectator mode will be available too. Aside from its use of online, Absolver's big draw is its combat system. Your character will be put up against other fighters in this world, duel in hand-to-hand combat, and at times even weaponry too. Combat almost plays out like a fast-paced strategy card game. Your character has 4 stances with different fighting moves that can be performed in the chain combo. These moves are all completely customizable to your choosing with different damage stats. You can earn new moves by defeating enemies who have fighting skills you have yet to learn. When fighting, it's up to you to cleverly use your range of equipped moves and combos to defeat your foes. It's not all about attacks though. You can dodge and guard enemy attacks, and if you successfully land a good timed dodge, you'll earn shards. These are the shards you see around your character, and they're used to fuel the powers you unlock in the game, such as the ability to slowly heal yourself or summon a sword out of thin air. The combat feels really great. I can best describe it as watching 2 airbenders fighting, which is why I named my main character Aang. Analyzing each other's moves and predicting which move to guard, dodge, while also keeping in mind your own set of moves, it's all pretty fast paced but also pretty strategic in the most satisfying way. The computer controlled enemies can get boring at times, but when you play against a human character, that's when the fun begins. When you start the game, you create a brand new prospect character. You can customize their gender, haircut, hair color, and their ethnicity. Most importantly, you can choose their combat style that dictates your special ability, as well as a stat buff. This can be changed later mid-game through the use of a school system that's sort of like a mini clan of sorts. You can create your own school or join someone else's in a mentoring system. This is all unlocked in later parts of the game when you're more of an advanced player. This brings us to the little RPG elements of Absolver. Your prospect has a number of stats that alter their combat, things like stamina, strength, health, and movement, just to name a few. All these stats can be upgraded with the points you earn from fighting enemies in the open world. The upgrade tree and system is pretty easy to get a grasp on, so even if you're not too into RPGs, it should be easy to grasp on. Absolver's visuals are a bit of a mixed bag. For the most part, the game's art style looks absolutely beautiful. The lovely scenery of waterfalls, sunsets in the distance, and vibrant colored plant life really does stand out. However, the low quality textures for things like walls and rocks also stands out, and that's only the beginning of the visual problems. Absolver suffers from some pretty bad pop-in, sometimes not loading things until you're actually where the object was supposed to be. It's completely distracting, not to mention that it can kick you out of bounds in the game's world. If you manage to get into an area that renders the building late, you can pretty much get kicked out of the open world. I've even had problems with double rendering, things like NPCs spawning in twice or even mini-bosses spawning in twice. Not to mention all the AI characters that end up running in place are just literally frozen. To be frank, there's just quite a lot of visual bugs, and most of the time they're connected to a gameplay bug that can get quite bothersome. Sadly, I can't say the audio gets any better than the visuals. There's some pretty calm tracks played throughout the game, but for the most part they're quiet and forgettable. It's actually pretty odd because the moments where you expect to have some fast-paced, energy-rising music, it's pretty slow music that just drags along. This problem is most apparent towards the end of the game when you fight the final boss. Furthermore, the sounds of the same few punches being looped over and over again during combat can get annoying and rather quickly too. Some more upbeat music or just variation on the sound effects during combat would have been appreciated. Absolver is a very ambitious game with some interesting gameplay. While I'm sure many are going to be quick to judge it as a melee-focused For Honor or Souls game, I take it more for a game that feels pretty unique in the way it handles its combat and its online system. It's a really interesting concept and one that I think could have worked well had it been more polished. At the moment though, there's quite a lot of bugs with Absolver that really push it beyond the level of forgiveness. The gameplay is cool, but too many times did I run into bugs that broke me out of the experience. The game's central story is a rather short one that can be completed in about 6 to 7 hours, and though you can explore the world after you beat the game, there isn't much of a motivation to. At the moment you can still train and level up your character after beating the game, but really only 1v1 multiplayer is the only thing left for you to do outside of training. Developer Slowcap has stated that they're working on those other online multiplayer modes I mentioned earlier. They've also mentioned planning to release free new content like combat moves and areas to explore in the future. If all that comes to fruition, then it'll definitely be an improvement on the replayability of this game. However, judging it based on the content that you get at launch and the bugs you also get at launch, I gotta say Absolver is something you should keep an eye on, but something you should hold off at least at launch. There just seems to be a lot of problems right now at launch. It's interesting in concept and the gameplay is cool, but it's probably something you should wait to see how it turns out in the future and not just be a beta tester right now. That does it for my review of Absolver, but if you have any questions that I may have missed in my review, feel free to ask me in the comment section down below and I'll be sure to get right back to you. If you enjoy my video game reviews, then please consider subscribing. I work on game reviews for PS4, Xbox One X, Nintendo Switch, and PC. Thank you all very much for watching, and keep on gaming.